Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news for the USC fans coming early Monday morning as Lincoln Riley in this USC program finding their next running backs coach heading into the 2024 season, going down to TCU and grabbing running back coach Anthony Jones and doing a little reading on Anthony Jones. You kind of heard the rumblings that he was the top candidate. This is a guy that over his last 6 years as a running backs coach, dating back to his time at TCU and at Memphis, has produced 6 NFL running backs over the last 6 years. You talk about some of the stuff that we talked about in terms of evaluating position coaches and position coach hires. You want to see that player development. Anthony Jones with a massive check in that department, working with guys like Kendre Miller, Imani Bailey, Kenny Gainwell, Antonio Gibson, Tony Pollard, Darrell Henderson. Phenomenal track record in terms of that player development department. I think USC fans should be fired up about this one. Want to get into Anthony Jones, talk a little bit about what he does from a player development standpoint, but also what he does on the recruiting trail as well. Before we get into it, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the USC fans. Many of you guys know how much I love talking about this program, whether we're talking coaching hires, transfer portal updates, position deep dives, what they're doing on the recruiting trail. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with this time at TCU where he joins this staff heading into that 2022 year. Just so happens to coincide with TCU making a run to the national championship, largely on the back of running back Kendre Miller, who went for 1,400 rushing yards, 6.2 yards per carry, had 17 rushing touchdowns, was largely one of the best running backs that we saw in that 2022 season. You fast forward to the 2023 season, Kendre Miller goes off to the NFL draft. He just cycles in another one, in Imani Bailey, who runs for over 1,200 yards and averages 5.5 yards per carry. I think that the development that you saw at a Power 5 program at TCU was extremely impressive. And you go back to his time at Memphis, and this is arguably one of the more impressive position coach resumes that you'll see at the running back spot, right? At Memphis, and this is not a shot at Memphis. I got a lot of respect for that program. You're not necessarily getting that top-tier talent from the high school ranks. Anthony Jones, in his 4 years at Memphis, produced 4 draft picks at that running back position: Kenny Gainwell, Antonio Gibson, Tony Pollard, and Darrell Henderson. Now, the storyline with these 4 running backs, when I was going back and looking at some of the numbers, doing a little dive on Anthony Jones, and one, Anthony Jones, a former wide receiver. And I don't think that's necessarily a coincidence that I'm going to read you guys some of the numbers as receivers, as pass catches from this running back room. Kenny Gainwell, during the 2019 season, had 51 catches for 610 yards. Antonio Gibson had 38 catches for 735 yards. Tony Pollard, 39 catches for 450 yards. And even Darrell Henderson, who's a little bit more of that bruiser back, 19 catches for 295 yards. One of the things that stands out is not only are these guys averaging well above 5 yards per carry, pretty much all of them, you're getting running backs who are dynamic out of the backfield. And again, Anthony Jones having that background as a wide receiver when he was playing his own football, I think he rubs off a little some pass catching juice at that running back spot, which is extremely rare at the college football level. You talk about NFL draft evaluations, a lot of the knocks on running backs are not comfortable coming out of the backfield, not being guys that can be weapons in that passing attack. If you're looking at this USC running back room heading into 2024, a guy like Woody Marks, who's a phenomenal pass catcher back at Mississippi State, you have a feeling that these running backs are not only going to be really good running the football, but they're going to be weapons coming out of the backfield as well. And you take a look at the Lincoln Riley offense and what it's predicated on, it's getting the football out to their guys in space. And that counts if you're a running back working on a linebacker, running a route, creating separation, creating explosive plays out of the backfield as running backs. A phenomenal track record in terms of player development for Anthony Jones. Now, the second side of the coin, if you will, is, all right, let's look at what Anthony Jones can do on the recruiting trail. And you start scrolling down to his time at TCU. And I mean, kind of an impressive in the short stint at TCU, right? 4-star running back in Cameron Cook, one of the top wide receivers in that 2022 class in Cordell Russell. He can get it done on the recruiting trail. Now, what stands out to me with Anthony Jones and kind of getting into his background is he's a former high school coach and a former damn good high school coach in the state of Tennessee. You start to see some guys that were coaching at the high school level really be good recruiters. And that's for two reasons. One, when you're a high school coach, you're around high school athletes all day. You know how to connect with them. You know how to kind of build that trust and build those relationships. But the second conversation, and a conversation I don't think happens enough on the recruiting trail, is what are your relationships with the high school coaches, right? And when you have background as being a high school coach, part of that, I guess, fraternity, if you will, in terms of high school football coaches, that also plays a role. And I think Anthony Jones is a guy that can go into high schools, not only form relationships with the players at that high school, but also formulate relationships with the coaches at the high school too, who again play a really large role in terms of where some of these kids decide to end up playing their college football. He doesn't have the crazy track record that some of these other position coaches have, just because of the fact that he's been at Memphis and TCU, not necessarily the programs that you're plucking top talent from, but a guy that I kind of trust can get it done on the recruiting trail. But at the end of the day, a guy that can develop players and talent like the best of them in the country. I think this is a riser in the industry, and I think this was a sneaky good hire, right? We hopped on and talked about some candidates for this USC job, and Anthony Jones didn't pop up on the list. But you start doing a dive into Anthony Jones, what he brings to the table. I think a lot of USC fans have a lot of reason to be really excited. Wanted to hop on, give you guys an update, give you guys some of my thoughts and opinions on this USC hire. Again, thank you to you guys for rocking with the fellas. Can't thank y'all enough for all the support. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Spring ball kicking off. Really excited to talk about this USC program, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.